Hametakipi. Apetikin le machanteta wogla ke hana pe choose apelo. E macha si chango lakota. Naha tiwahi ta sampe oyanke. Hello, my relatives. My name is Steve Tamayo. I'm the cultural specialist for Omaha Public Schools, specifically for the NICE program, the Native Indigenous Center of Education. And so we are here at the Joslyn Museum to showcase some of the relatives that have been in the vaults for many, many years. And so these relatives are what we call humpas, which are footwear, moccasins. Umahas identify and acknowledge these as himbe. Himbe is just the footwear, it's the moccasins once again. And so we've been making a series of humpas here. And so these ones are much earlier. And so what's really awesome about these moccasins is the designs incorporated. And so once reservations were established, this design actually kind of disappeared. And so even today, I don't know anybody that's making and recreating these designs. And so it's actually a shield protecting the individual. And so back in the day, you know, we didn't create and draw and bead and quill our bodies proportionally. And so you can see how elongated their feet are. And so their legs, and once again, even their nata, their head, you know, very narrow, skinny. And so when some people see this, you know, they might identify that as a turtle, but it's missing its tail and the other two legs. And so this is why we know that this is a shield from long ago. And so once again, we would decorate and adorn with quill work. This is called plating. We would incorporate these quills and sew them into this hide specific, and then tell a story of our existence and the importance of survival through war, through famine, through raids. And so that's how important these humpas are. And so once again, when you look at them, you know, what's really awesome about these is once they made them for the individual, of course, we all grow up taller and we keep growing. And so that's what happened here. But what happened was they could actually alter and fix moccasins. And so in the back part, they have a piece that they incorporated to extend it, to make it wider and longer. And so this is a common practice that you know, I've done in the past, but I rarely see people do anymore. So this is really cool to see this in the museum setting. And so once again, you know, this predates colonial contact here. And so once again, I say that because of our soles made out of rawhide. And so it was common, you know, back in the day to use the elk, to use the buffalo, that hide, that rawhide as the soles. And so all we would do is step on a piece of rawhide, trace that foot with a piece of charcoal, get another straight stick, and then straighten up and get rid of those curves. And so this is how you make moccasin soles today. And so, but then once you beaded and adorned the top part of this moccasin top, then it was time to sew it in onto the sole. It's two different pieces. And so the easiest way to sew this in is actually to soak the rawhide to make it softer, make it pliable, and then sew it with your stitch on the inside. None of our stitches were outside, because as we walked across the land, the rocks, the terrain, the shrubbery, everything that existed would actually catch the thread and the stitchery on the outside. And so that's why all of our stitches are inside. And so once again, these are some really nice old moccasins that have been fixed to fit either the same person, just to make them a little bit bigger, or somebody else. And so that brings us to this. And so we call this very commonly the 3-row. So here is 1, 2, 3. But we also incorporated the 4 directional signs. And so earlier I explained this conceptual number of 4, and how we incorporate it into today is the 4 colors of man. It's also the 4 winds, the 4 directions, the 4 seasons, the 4 parts to plants. And so, you know, incorporating this very simple symbol has a deeper meaning and understanding. And so on the outsides, of course, were explaining the importance of Uchimaka, of Grandmother Earth, and the skies up above. And so that's why you have this two-cone or two-color tone here. And so once again, they adorn the top of it just by this zigzag cut. So they would cut this way, and so they did that all the way around, but it gave it a nice look for adornment reasons only. And so once again, you know, they incorporated this very special tongue inside of here, and I have a chart of different styles and types of tongues that we incorporate, because it can either determine, are these moccasins for the male or for the female, or for our Winkte or Blokawi. And so that's how important the tongues are, because it identifies and explains what gender specific those moccasins belong to. And there's a lot of our relatives who, you know, they might go back and forth, and so you'll see a rectangular tongue, and so once that means, you know, once they incorporate that, they're just neutral. And so that's how important that is. And so unlike this is very typical of a female, a woman's tongue, and how it's tapered inward. And so what's so special and unique about these is this is brain tan hide, and look how rough it is. And so it looks like that on inside and outside. The rough part is actually the inside of the four-legged relative. The outside is more compact, and you can actually see the hair fiber, which has a darker discoloration here. And so that's common because, you know, the outside of that relative, he endures a lot of the rain, the heat, and all kinds of different types of weather. So it makes sense for our clothing to be on the outside that way. And so what's so unique about these is actually what is on the inside. And so on the inside is somebody recycled a rawhide container. And so the natural paint pigments, the commercial dyes, and the paints that made their way here, they were painted on the hard skin, rawhide. And so, you know, it was common back in the day for us to scrape and salvage and keep everything that we found on the plains. And so when we butchered our buffaloes, we kept all the epidermis, the membrane, all of the scraps, the hooves, hairs, pieces of skin. We would cook that all up and actually make a hide glue. And so when paint pigment, powder pigment, made its way here as a trade item, or we made our own natural paint pigments out of rocks, plants, and other items that we found outside, we would mix it with that hide glue, and it would actually adhere, it would bond. We would glue that paint pigment onto the rawhide, and these moccasins, you know, might be 150 plus years old, but that's how and why they were able to preserve and keep that paint pigment so vibrant onto our hide. And so that's really awesome. That's really cool to actually see this. And so very rarely do I come across moccasin soles that have they utilize the old rawhide containers, because the hides were so valuable, you just didn't throw them away, you didn't leave them on the ground. And so you would find other usage for all of these scraps and these pieces. So once our containers wore out, we just saved it, because we could use that as even our liners for our little babies and their moccasin soles. And so that's how special that is. And so once again, you know, we follow this path. We're always on this, what they call a zuya, a journey. And so that's what this is. It's a continuation of our path in a circular motion. And for the Lakotas, you know, we emerged in our creation stories, we emerged out of the Black Hills. We migrated over towards the Carolinas, present-day Carolinas. And then we went back. We ended back up in the woodland region, and then we headed back westward, back to the Black Hills, our place of origin. And so understanding that, that's the path that I talk about, our zuyas, our journeys. And so once again, we relied on the buffalo, and this is the buffalo hoof. And you can see that when I hold it upright. You can see the pointiness of that. And so the importance of the grass, once again, and how we needed that for our buffaloes and for our horses. And so we are very careful on protecting the grasslands of the plains. And so these moccasins are amazing as well. And so, you know, up in the Canadian areas, up into Idaho, Washington, we look at the Plateau region up there and how the Northern Cree, that's how we identify them today, you know, incorporated their very bold and vibrant colors in the floral designs once again. And so the floral designs actually will tell you the story of the medicinal, the edibles, the drinkables, and the spiritual plants that we utilize. And so that's how important plants are. And so when you look at our floral designs, you know, people with the untrained eye just think they're all floral designs, you know, they're just flowers, but they're more than that. And so within these, you know, educational videos, we can incorporate our cultural teachings in the importance of said plants and how do we utilize them. And that's how special they are, because there's certain plants in South Dakota that don't exist anywhere else. And so when we go into ceremony, you know, we make hundreds of ties, prayer ties, because we identified the hundreds of plants that we've been able to survive on, not only from the plains, but from the East Coast and the woodland region. And so this knowledge was passed down of the importance of the plants. And so we have hundreds of prayer ties that we incorporate. And so they are very specific numbers once again. But that varies with our spiritual leaders. And so one thing about our spirituality as Indigenous people is nothing is ever the same. And the reason why is because we're visionary people. And our visions, our dreams, this is how we are gifted and brought these medicines, this know-how, this cultural knowledge. And so we all have different dreams. And so we all have different interpreters amongst our own people to tell you what these dreams are about. And so within that, we incorporate them into our clothing. And so on the ankle cuffs here, we incorporate fringe hanging down, not only for adornment, not only for decoration, but it serves a purpose and a function. And so when these moccasins get wet, we needed a drainage. And so that is the reason why when you look at Native American clothing, you'll find fringe hanging off everywhere, usually off of the sleeves. Once again, you know, it explains the movement. And we can be talking about something as simple as the grass that we needed to survive on for our buffaloes and our horses. But for the fringe purpose alone, it has a very specific function. It allows, once again, the water to seep down, and these become little pieces of drainage. And so it serves a very specific function and purpose for the Indigenous people. So once again, when you look at our clothing, our pants, our dresses, our shirts, you know, there's fringe hanging off of everything. But that's why, is because it is a drainage for us. So thank you once again for your time, I hope.